All right.
I'm so excited. You guys, I have Nmadili Okwumabua. Yes, got it. And she is someone in the Africatown network that really has her eye on the pulse when it comes to architecture and design. We brought her into our town hall in 2017 to be our guest speaker and be our keynote speaker for architecture and design. And you have been doing some amazing things regarding this, like really it's new age for us, but it's really the infusion of African aesthetic into design. So thank you so much for joining us, Nmadili. I'm so excited. I know that you are there in Atlanta holding it down for the design and architecture world. What is going on, my friend? I think the coronavirus has us all scrambled. Let us hear from you. How are you doing?
I'm fine. I'm fine. Thanks, Trey. It is awesome to see you. Beautiful as always.
Oh,
great work that you all are doing up there in Africatown in Seattle. And yes, we are holding it down in Atlanta. It's been an amazing experience. I mean, who would have thought something would happen in the world globally that will have us all sitting in our homes? Yeah. Under quarantine. I mean, it's an amazing experience, and it's a wonderful time for us to sit and reflect. So that's what I'm doing here with my family in Atlanta. Made it back into the country 2 days before the U.S. closed its borders for people coming from Europe and Africa. So we thought it was a joke while I was in Nigeria and Ghana, traveling around, and got to America, and it was real. It was on. So I've been in the house now for about 3 weeks. Yeah. I got a few stories to share, but yeah, we're holding it down.
Right. And I know that we were talking a little bit the other day, and you were saying how it's like, look, your family is already congregating together. You guys have people you're opening your doors, bless your heart, because you're like, no, we're going to do this together. Here, let's tell the people a little bit more about that communality that you're experiencing now.
Okay, well, so it's 9 of us here in my home right now. This is my brother's home. My brother, his wife, his 4 kids, myself, my sister, and my mom. So we've got 9 of us here together. I do have another brother, and his wife and children are in their home about 45 minutes away. But we're just waiting. If it gets really bad, then yes, we will all come together, and that'll be about 13 of us in the house. But we're all here together, just helping each other. And my brother said, we're going to stay in. And in the beginning, I was like, oh my God, I got to get out. But he said, no, Nmadili, let's just keep it down to 1 or 2 people only going out to buy groceries. Yeah. So we have that point of contact if in case somebody, gets ill. But we're in the house, we're practicing all kinds of, well, I wouldn't say social distancing for us in the house, but at least being safe, washing of hands. When somebody goes out, they leave their clothes out in the garage. Before you bring in the mail or you bring in the food, you wipe it down with Clorox wipes, things like that. So we're really, really practicing, being safe and healthy at this time. Yeah. And getting along and falling in love all over again. That's the part I love.
Yeah, that's one of the things that we were just talking about it on the show today, actually, just about how it's making people do things differently, right? It's like you have to relearn your kids, relearn your spouse, relearn, you're doing, your brother, your sister, your siblings, right? I mean, that's part of what this quarantine is doing for the culture, is we're really connecting again.
And when you say culture, that's one of the things. So as you know, the CPDI platform, the CPDI Africa platform, the whole thing has just been, how do we bring in those African elements of design that are based on culture, right? Because architecture is a reflection of your culture, your aesthetics, your traditions, spirituality. It's a reflection, the translation of all of those things in the built environment. So when you say culture, well, how do we live in spaces, in the diaspora, in Africa, all around the world, basically. But, from the African perspective, it's everybody in the house, right? So you got your grandparents, your parents, the young adults, children, babies, everybody at every stage of life, there's somebody in the house that's representing that category. And how do they communicate? How do they live together? What's important to that person that's not important to the other person? But because we're communal, I have to understand it and celebrate it with you. It's sharing love, you know? So everyone coming together now, like you said, I mean, parents for the first time getting a chance to learn their children, who their kids really are. I mean, you send them off to school every day. You have no idea who your kids are with their parent, with their teachers and their classmates. Now your children are at home. You're like, oh my God, is this really my son or my daughter? Oh my God, you know? Husbands and wives for the first time, you know, not just coming home after work, but being home, being together, you know, and like I said, falling in love all over again. It could be, you know, bumpy for some, but, you know, just having and finding things to do, right? To spend time happily in the space. So again, coming from that African perspective, you know, what did families do when they were in those family compounds, right? So culturally, Africans have, again, their grandparents. You don't send people off to retirement homes.
Right.
Your parents' age, you take care of them, right? So the elderly are always amongst us. You have aunts and uncles who always come and live with the nuclear family, which is never really nuclear, right? You have children, you have siblings. So everybody's in those spaces. What are they doing together? Most of the time, they are sharing culture, stories, history. The popular adage is that, you know, first of all, the architecture of homes is it's a bunch of rooms, bedrooms around an open courtyard, right? So that open courtyard is the living room. So everybody has their room. We call them huts, but they're not really huts. Those are bedrooms, and they're all around an open courtyard. So you've brought the outside in, right? So in this beautiful open courtyard space, that's the living room. So everyone comes out of their bedrooms. There's no privacy. You come out into the courtyard and you commune, you talk, you sing, you dance. The parents train up the children because all the children back then were homeschooled. That's where you teach the language and the spirituality, and the mothers teach the daughters how to cook. And there, even the little gardens in there, we all learn to farm in the garden, you know? You sing and it's all about praising God, worshiping, right? So that's what happens in this courtyard. And you can be so content in that space. Of course, you go out, there's, you know, those things were not formed by quarantine, pandemic, right. but that was just part of just natural living, right? And so you say, well, how can I borrow some of that? Like if we were to talk to, if architects now were to talk to many of us who are sitting in our homes and say, okay, now you're in your house, what are you experiencing? What do you wish you had? What are you doing for fun? What are some of the spaces you think you might need in your home going forward, so if this ever happened again, you'll be more comfortable? So if architects begin to talk to people now, it'll be interesting, the things that we would say, right? And I think a lot of the responses are going to be based on how we're getting along. We had more fun when we sat and played games at the table. Okay, so we want a game room. We had more fun when we sat and told stories and danced. So that there might be a dance space. Or the parents, we had to negotiate our love, go and have communications in a private space, and then come out after having resolved issues and then face the children and family again. You know, things like that. And so we will start seeing a gym. People want to work out. There might be a gym in your house. Prayer room. We're not going to church anymore now. So we need a quiet, sacred space in our home for prayer. You know, architects might hear those kinds of things, and that will begin to shape how we design our homes. And it's all based on family, love, connection. And especially when, you know, when you have friends who are single and who are living in their own single homes right now, experiencing being alone. I think also we might be able to design houses that are maybe bigger or a different style of home. So if you want to bring in friends who are single, or just even family members who are single, so that they can be close and have community and not be ostracized in their separate houses or apartments somewhere, you know, how would you lay out spaces like that? it's a lot for architects to think through, and they could come up with some really interesting designs, again, that borrow even from African architecture.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that breakdown. Because and just for the record, for those who don't know CPDI, can you explain that really quickly, just for the record?
Okay. So CPDI Africa, which stands for the Community Planning and Design Initiative Africa, it's a research platform that looks to identify traditional African design elements, right? So how Africans design their spaces. Find those elements that are still beautiful and are relevant today, so we can incorporate them in contemporary architecture, right? So the first thing is to find out those elements that are beautiful, because they preserve culture, they preserve a story, they preserve the identity of a people, right? So it's architectural preservation, cultural preservation through the built environment. But the other thing is finding those elements in Africa so we could solve some of the problems that we're facing today in the built environment. So why can't we use local materials, right? You can harvest your own clay bricks and make your own bricks from your own site. It makes your house cheaper. Why are you having to buy cement or buy bricks? Instead of importing materials from outside, use what's local to you to keep the cost down, and other things like that.
Right. So it really brings on a lot of the elements that are really built into almost like the culture in Africa, right?
Yeah.
Throughout, and really bringing it into the architectural space. And so I just for the record, I wanted to make sure folks understood that. But I think that what you're saying in terms of building for social distancing and literally designing spaces for what we're experiencing now is such a great understanding of how industry progresses, right? That's one of the things that I was thinking after we spoke. I thought, wow, one of the things that we are actually witnessing right now is a revolution in terms of it's making industry think about a different way to do business, a different way to connect with the consumer, a different way, as you just said, to design for what we need now. And I think that throughout time, that has really been quintessentially the reason for change. There's a need, a need arises, and then it is met with, okay, this is how we're going to do this thing. So I feel like that's really where you're at right now.
Yes. It's the professionals thinking through, and you're right. It's us responding to what's going on today. So like you're saying, okay, so right now we have to work from home. Is there a quiet space in your house where a mom or a dad could work from home, or a professional could work from home? We're teaching our kids from home. Is there a quiet space in the house for the kids to go in there and interact with their teachers online, right? Quarantine. Okay, somebody might have gone out and they need to come in now and spend 2 weeks in the house in quarantine from the rest of the family members. Is there a space that's secure for them to do that, but not be so cut off from the rest of the family? I don't know, maybe one of the walls could have like a window, a glass, so you can still make eye contact with the rest of the family, right? So like we mentioned, the gym. Do you have a gym space or a courtyard space? I love the interior courtyard space because that is so crucial to our well-being. Yeah. I mean, just wanting to get outside. If you could bring the outside in, oh my God, just you come out of your room and you walk into an open garden space in the middle of your house. Right. That's open to the elements, that breathes, the sunshine is pouring on you. You know what I mean? What a wonderful, the children can get out there and run and be safe, right? Because many of us don't have backyards or houses that have the gates or the fences around them so you can feel secure if the kids are playing outside. But if you bring that outside space inside, I think that the kids are outside all day long, running and jumping.
Right.
So, and the fact that we're having food delivered now, medicine. My sister-in-law is a doctor, so she's working from home now. So her patients are calling her, she's calling them, they're doing telemedicine, right? So, I mean, for the profession, having to respond to all of this, it would change the way we design our homes. It would change the way we design our offices. We'll need less space. Grocery stores. How do you stock grocery store shelves where the buyer maybe only picks up the one he wants, right? Not touching all of them before he chooses one and then putting the virus or whatever the case may be. So designing with safety in mind, coming from, whether it's, a pandemic, germ warfare, or whatever it is. But yes, it's the profession responding to current issues that impacts, the built environment, our architecture today.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think is so important in what you're describing is that these spaces, you just said it, they already exist. This is the way that a lot of African children are raised, right? It is, they have their bedroom. So they know if they want a little bit of privacy and all, they go to their bedroom, right? But they know as soon as they come out of that, it's open, they're open to the rest of the family. And I think that already that is literally what we're talking about in terms of new spaces and what we need today. So a lot that we can learn from or glean from really exists in the past or exists in other places of the world. And that is where we need to be learning and gleaning from them as well. And I think too, on the basis of that, there are cultural aspects, right, that are also important to us at this time, as this virus has, really shown us where we have some vulnerability in some places where we can actually grow, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel that, we were talking about education here, right? There's a lot of work being done to empower parents right now and let parents know, hey, you can do this, you can do this. I think that's great messaging. And the way that you evolve that messaging or advance that messaging is then you really have to start talking about cultural norms, because ultimately it is the culture, I feel, that is going to be the thread that really weaves all of these things, these new changes we need to make together. And you talked about the age-old principle of family raising family, and that being such a base principle in African cultures. Don't you feel that is really what we need to be seeing now?
I tell you one thing. So I'm here with my brother's family. I don't have children. And I'll add, so my heritage is I'm African American from Memphis, Tennessee, my mom, and I'm from Nigeria through my dad. And one of the things I always remember him trying to do was to teach us Igbo. Igbo is the language of my dad's people in Nigeria. And so he would, he tried his best, our 1, 2, 3s, our ABCs, things like that. And that's something I've always wanted to pass down to my nieces and my nephews. I tell you, thanks to the quarantine, finally, and not just me, their mom, because we're home, we finally have the opportunity to share knowledge that we wouldn't have been able to, because no longer, see, in African societies, Black societies, the griot, we tell stories. We tell our history and our culture through music. We sit under the moonlight in those courtyards and share the stories of our ancestors. That is what's being lost for us as a people when we go to school. The schools don't teach us who we are. We learn everybody else's story. The only way we're gonna know our story is if we get it from our parents. So did our parents have the opportunity to sit with their parents and hear those stories? Whether it's sit on the back porch, under the moonlight, doesn't matter. How did your parents get the stories? What free time did they have? And then now, what free time do they have to give it to their kids? So in just 2 days of quarantine, my little 1, 2, 3s, which is what I know, and a few other words of Igbo, I finally taught my 4 nieces and nephews in the house. Finally. And that's just their 1, 2, 3s. Think of what else we could teach now. All those important things, again, that they don't get when they go to school, right? So homeschooling still remains important for us, for everybody, but definitely for us. What do you want your children to know about you and their ancestors? What's important? What are those culture, even if it's cooking? The young one now is learning how to cook collard greens and cornbread. I mean, with what time was that going to happen before? So so much. So I'm hoping that, yes, as we all reflect, when we come out of this on the other side, we will all have made personal changes. We would have committed Because a lot of what we're experiencing now, we wanted to do in the past. We wanted to have time to spend with family, of course, play games, movie night, telling stories, whatever. We wanted to do that, but we didn't have the time. Ripping and running. Then tons of homework kids are bringing back. You got to help them with their homework. But if we make that mental shift now, hopefully when things go back to normal, which I don't think they ever really will, we will keep some of these practices of love.
Yes.
Yes. We will keep them in our daily routine. I'm praying that.
Oh, you know what? I couldn't have said it better. I'm so thankful that we were able to connect with you and let our viewers hear from you, because I think it's so important. I think what you just hit the nail on the head in terms of the validity of this time right now and how we can take what we're doing right now and into the future, because we can't go back to the way it was. Obviously, I think for Blacks and Natives, especially in America, we deal with the disparities the most. They hit our cultures and hit our races the hardest. And ultimately, I think it's important for us to come out of this virus, this quarantine, with a new idea, a new set of values, and a new approach. Something that we take on, and that we, I love what you said, like owning it. We keep some of these things that we're doing, even when you're able to go back to work. How are you going to infuse these same kind of cultural value lessons into the next generation? So I'm so thankful that you were able to give us some time today. I mean, I think everything you said is so on point. It's so necessary. Our audience needed to hear it. So thank you again.
Thank you, Trey. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I support all the great work you're doing up there at Africatown. We're watching you, our eyes on you guys. Y'all are shining the light and leading the way. So good job, Trey. Love to see you.
That. Yes, it's hard work, but we love doing it.
Awesome.
And you guys, that was Molly. And thank you so much again. We appreciate it.
See you soon.